Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard the news, which is that Fernando Alonso will be rejoining his former team Renault, signing a 2-year deal, and will be partnering Esteban Ocon from the 2022 season. Alonso's return to the sport after 2 years out has been met with some mixed reactions, to say the least. Alonso is obviously a very divisive and controversial figure in Formula One. Some adore him, just as many hate him. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle. I think he's a great driver, one of the best ever, in fact, but, I'm not a big fan of his personality and, how he goes about leading teams. But that's not the topic of this video, how much Alonso is loved or hated by fans. The topic of this video is him going to Renault. Does it make sense for both parties? Does it make sense for Renault? Does it make sense for Alonso? So I think that overall this move does make sense. It is a good move. Initially, like most of the F1 community, I reacted negatively. I thought it didn't make any sense, but I also have had a few days to think about it. I think it ultimately makes sense. I've seen why they eventually did decide on signing Alonso. Not to say that this is a masterstroke by Renault and there are absolutely no downsides to signing Alonso, because it's not at all like that. There certainly is a big risk signing Alonso for reasons that I'm going to get into in this video, but I think we should start with the good, why this is a good decision by Renault and the main reasons why they have signed Alonso. So to put it mildly, this Alonso guy, well, he's pretty good. Double world champion in 2005, 2006 with Renault, had some fiery stints at McLaren and Ferrari, putting in some great drives, but unfortunately didn't result in any championships. But yeah, for most of his career, he's been a top driver, and even at the ripe old age of 38, he'll still at least be at 90% of his peak, and that's still more than good enough to be a top driver in today's Formula One. So Alonso is a top-tier driver, but not only that, the one thing that he can do better than any other driver on this current F1 grid is getting the maximum amount of performance out of a mediocre car. And if you look at that, that is exactly why Renault have signed Alonso. They need results ASAP to impress the board and, convince them that this whole F1 project is something that they need to continue to pour a huge amount of funds into. In short, Fernando Alonso was the best available driver that Renault could get. And not only is it good for Renault, I think it's a good thing for the sport. Formula One needs characters like Alonso. He's certainly a divisive character, as much as people hate him. Wherever Alonso goes, there's going to be drama, there's going to be action, there's going to be excitement. Not to mention that the fact that he is still an amazing driver. And I think it will be very interesting because you're having all the older drivers like Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso going against a younger generation like George Russell, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc. So I think that older versus younger dynamic will be very interesting in the coming seasons. Now let's look at the main reason why people are so angry about Alonso being signed to Renault. And if I could sum it up in one word, it would be age. Alonso is 38 years old. When he starts his first season back at Renault, he will be 39, and he's been in the sport for a very long time, longer than I've been alive. This will be like his 17th or 18th season or something like that, and he's not exactly going to be here for much longer, and he's denying a young driver a chance to prove themselves in Formula One. So let's take a look at Renault's young drivers. So obviously they have the Renault Sport Academy, and I would say that their flagship driver at the moment would be Chinese driver Guan Yu Zhou. The 21-year-old currently races in Formula 2, and people are really hyping him up to be the next big thing. He seems to have a lot of talent and potential, and if he were to make it to Formula 1, he would be the first Chinese driver in the sport. So, this is a big opportunity for Renault, not only talent-wise, but even more so marketability. Having the first Chinese driver can make not only Renault, but Formula 1 bigger in such a big market that is China. But yeah, I definitely think it's something that Renault are considering, and at best it could increase car sales in that part of the world. My question is this guy as good as people make him out to be? Is he actually good enough for Formula 1 at this moment in time? And even though my feeder series knowledge is abysmal, it only takes a simple Google search to pull up the Formula 2 results from 2019, and you can see that Guan Yu Zhou finished 7th in Formula 2. I understand that these drivers do need a few years to show what they're made of in Formula 2 and really prove themselves in this series. And I bet that in 4 or 5 years' time, Guan Yu Zhou can be a top talent in Formula One. But is he ready for the top category of racing next year? In my view, absolutely not. And, he obviously is in Formula 2 this year. He is a title favorite. But even if Renault wanted to sign him right now, they couldn't. This is because to be eligible for Formula One, you need what is called a super license. And one of the ways you can get a super license is over your career earning 40 super license points. Now, Guan Yu Zhou does not have 40 yet. I believe that he needs to finish top 3 or top 4 in Formula 2 to get enough super license points to qualify for Formula 1. So, right now, as we speak, he is not eligible to be a Formula 1 driver. If they're a multi-billion-dollar company and racing in the top category of motorsports, you can't exactly tell the Renault board that we're going to wait for this rookie whose talent isn't even confirmed yet and wait until the end of the season to sign a driver and take him over a 2-time Formula One world champion that has proved himself in the sport. I'm sorry, I cannot see that happening. But back to Alonso. So we've established that signing Alonso is better than Renault signing one of their junior drivers for the reasons I discussed. But now let's look at one of the other options, and the most logical one would be Nico Hülkenberg. The German driver was with Renault in 2017 and 2018 before being dropped in favor of Esteban Ocon. However, he was a prime candidate for the seat when Ricciardo decided to jump ship, but ultimately they decided on signing Alonso. But as for Hülkenberg, I think that he definitely would have been the safest option. Signing a rookie or signing Alonso, those are two quite radical options, I would say. But signing Hülkenberg, now he would be bang in the middle. And Hülkenberg would bring a lot of stability to Renault, which is something that they desperately need. Because since they joined the sport in 2016, they have had 7 different drivers, and Mercedes in that same time period have only had 3 drivers who drove for them. And, Renault has just been a revolving door. Ricciardo is the last driver to jump ship because he clearly didn't have faith in the program. And Renault dropped a really good driver like Nico Hülkenberg, which was a questionable decision to say the least. And yeah, Hülkenberg, lineup of Hülkenberg and Ocon, it's not exactly the most exciting or explosive lineup, but I think it would bring a lot of stability, a lot of consistency to Renault to help them slowly but surely bridge the gap to the top teams. And a consistent, level-headed driver who won't exactly win you titles, but will help you get those consistent points, that is not at all what Alonso is. In fact, he is the complete opposite. Obviously, Alonso is a great driver. He will get those points. He will be consistent. I'm more talking about his personality. He is obviously one of the most fiery and controversial characters on the grid, and he is known for, he's obviously in his past been involved in quite a few scandals in Formula One, and it's mostly described as, Alonso is known for creating a toxic pressure cooker environment within a team, and ever since he won his championships with Renault, whenever he left a team, they ended up improving quite a lot, and it looked like a completely different team. Like, ever since he's left McLaren were on the up. Ever since he left Ferrari, well, they improved drastically after his departure, so, I can't exactly say that this is a coincidence. And having a driver that will destabilize the team, discourage the team, that is absolutely the last thing that Renault need right now, because I think the team environment with Cyril Abiteboul in charge, I think it's already become like that, and that's why Ricciardo left the team. He just didn't like the feel of the team. He didn't like the direction that it was going. So having Cyril Abiteboul, who I just get bad vibes from completely, I don't think he's a good team principal, and then having Alonso, who's known for being that type of character, clashing heads like that with throwing Ocon in the fray, I wonder if that could create quite a few fireworks and even lead to Renault leaving the sport. The question is, will Alonso create that destabilizing, negative pressure cooker environment within Renault and just push things over the boiling point? Well, I think that with his 2 years out of the sport, I think he would have changed. I think it's just telling me that this is a different Alonso that we're seeing. His 2 years racing at Le Mans and doing the Dakar Rally and Daytona 24. I think he's now a different driver. He's not that same driver that was constantly making fun of Honda over the team radio because of their GP2 engines. I think that this time at Renault, things could be different. And the reason why I'm thinking this is because he's going to be coming into the team with different expectations that he joined Ferrari and McLaren. When he joined Ferrari and McLaren, the expectations was that they were going to win championships, dominate the sport. It's not necessarily the same thing with Renault. I think Alonso, in the twilight of his career, is partially coming to F1 just because he wants to race, like, Kimi Raikkonen, who he said it's a hobby. I think that is part of it, and I think it's more of a, let me stick around for the next few years with the new regulations, see where this goes. If Renault becomes a top team, well, that's great. I'm now back at a top team. I can win races, fight for championships. If, Renault is still a midfield team, still not there, then yeah, after 2 years, he leaves. So by having lower expectations, he has less of a reason to be frustrated and cause the memorable outbursts that he did, like he was at McLaren Honda. And maybe, from the 2 years out and just from reflecting on his time in Formula One, maybe he would have eventually kind of learned that approach of really high expectations and, putting the team down when they're at their lowest. Maybe he's learned that approach doesn't necessarily work and he'll approach this differently. For those reasons, I think that signing Fernando Alonso indeed was the correct decision. First of all, he was the best driver that they could afford, the best driver they could get. It does not make sense to promote their junior drivers because they simply are not ready for 2022. And finally, if Alonso changes his ways, changes his mentality, like I'm predicting, then this could ultimately work. This harmonious partnership that Alonso is finally coming back to for a third time, in fact, I think that this ultimately could work. So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on Fernando Alonso signing for Renault. Ultimately, I think it was the right way to go, and I'm completely unbiased here. I am not a Fernando Alonso fan by any stretch of the imagination, but that's going to do it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to comment your thoughts below. I bet there's going to be a lot of spicy discussion here. Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? What are your own thoughts on this whole situation? I really want to hear what you guys say, so leave your comments and like and subscribe and all of that stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.